Hello, everyone. So, welcome back to part 3 of this series wherein we are discussing about how to choose a good research topic or a powerful research topic for our research thesis, research paper, or any research dissertation. So, we have already discussed what are the checkpoints in our part 1. We have also discussed that as a researcher, what we need to do. So, the half part is covered in part 2 of the series. Today, this is the part 3, and we are going to cover the rest of the part. That is, we were discussing about finer criteria. We have discussed two parts and the two criterias. The rest of the criterias we are going to discuss today. So, just to be quickly revising on, we have covered the checkpoints in part 1 of the series. Further, we have discussed the finer criteria that we as a researcher, what we need to do whenever we are sorting the right topic for our research, the right domain for our research. Now, we have discussed the final criteria or the methodology is that our title or our research uh, framework or the research topic should fulfill the criteria of feasibility. It should be interesting, it should be novel, it should be ethical, and it should be relevant. In part 2 of the series, we have covered the novelty part, so we are going to skip that. We have also covered that what all things entails when we call a title to be interesting. Now, in today's video, we are going to cover the rest of the three parts of final criteria. So let's begin. So the next thing comes in whenever we talk about or whenever we are squeezing out or shortlisting or finding out a good title for our research, relevancy comes in. So what is the relevancy? So the topic or the research topic should be relevant. That means that the research should provide an answer that resonates with the beneficiary and stakeholders in reality. So we all know as a researcher, we starts with a problem that is existing and then we try to attempt to provide a solution towards that problem. Now, relevancy is defined by when we provide an answer that must resonate with some beneficiary, right? Which community, which society, which country, which business, which company, which industry the solution is helping in, right? So it's very, very important that whatever topic or the topic which we are selecting in, or the problem we are addressing in, should be beneficial to some beneficiaries and some stakeholders in reality. So this is one of the very major factor, because if we are doing some research on any topic and there are no specific beneficiaries or stakeholders, let's note that a research topic starts with a problem, the the research objectives, and if it is not bringing us somewhere, it's actually not fulfilling the relevancy criteria. So we have to address to a problem so that we can provide an answer to the respective stakeholders. Now, coming to the premier journals, premier journals actively prioritize impactful research, encompassing both the things. The first, we should include the foundational research, that is, it should build on theory, some established theory, or it should lead to some conceptual advancement, right? So, this is the first criteria. And the second criteria which premier journals look forward to is translational research. That in application, how feasible, how applicable that research outcomes are in practical worlds, right? So in practice, relevance outcomes are also very, very important. So just to again revise and reiterate that premier journals focus on these two things whenever they talk about the impactful research. Then we have to ask a few questions to ourselves. So the first is, of course, whether our research is giving some or building on some theory, or is it leading to some conceptual advancement or not. The next is our research is application oriented or practice relevant outcomes? Is it giving it? So this is the first thing which we have to ask ourselves and with our research topic. The next is we have to ask that will the supposed beneficiary and the stakeholders care about the findings of your research, right? So let's say if as a researcher I feel that topic X is very important for Y beneficiaries, right? But I have to cross check that from my perspective it's relevant, but we have to read, dive down deep, interview if we can some beneficiaries that whether they are going to take care of or care about our research outcomes or not. Is it going to be beneficial for them or the stakeholders which are actually getting benefited with our research? So what we are expecting, right? So we have to ask this question to ourselves, that will the supposed beneficiaries and the stakeholders care about the findings of the research or not? Because ultimately, as a researcher, our objective is to solve a problem, to build on some theory, to give some practice relevant outcomes. So we have to ask this thing and cross validate that as well. If our answer is yes to the above question, that means the relevance could be reasonably claimed and established. If the answer to the above question is no, then we have to again check, because our research topic might be lacking in relevance. So if it is not of some benefit to the beneficiaries, if it is not building on any theory, if it is not giving us practice relevant outcomes, then we need to relook to the research objective and topic. Then comes the ethics part, and we have to understand and carve this in our mind that ethics is an absolute must in any research. Now, a good research topic should be ethical, which means that the research on that topic should provide an answer that does not breach any law, professional code of conduct, or moral standards. So, as a researcher, and we have also uploaded on our channel one detailed video on ethics in research as well, wherein you can just make yourself aware that what are the ethical standards which we need to be very mindful of whenever we are specifically doing research. All right. So we have to be very, very careful about law, professional code of conduct, and moral standards. Now, what are the questions which we need to ask whenever we are specifically filtering out the research title or the topic for ourselves or for our research? Will the research topic and its finding expose researchers and others to any harm or risk? So we have to ask and be very, very mindful about this, because any kind of ethical breach may lead to big repercussions to us as in researchers. So again, just to reiterate, let's do not breach any law, any professional code of conduct, and moral standards. To know more detail about it, you may just refer to the video which we have uploaded on research or the ethics in research as well. So the researchers, or if we are collecting, for example, data with some respondents, we need to check that if we have asked them to be anonymous, we are not supposed to expose their identities, or there should not be any harm to any researcher, any stakeholder, any respondent, any of the person, or the structure or the process. We don't have to follow anything that actually harms anyone at any stage, right? So we have to ask this. So if the answer to the above question is yes, then what is the extent of potential harm or risk, right? So we have to ask that. If it is a low, moderate, or high likelihood, that indicates that the risk is negligible, right? And requires mitigation mechanism, right? So we have to ask this thing, that how much is the risk? So let's say I'm conducting some study on workplace harassments, okay? And I'm going to collect the data from, let's say, from some organization, right? Now, what are the potential harms or risk? That if the employees of that organizations are sharing some information with me, the potential harm one of the potential harm can be that they might be worried about their identity exposure, right? They might be worried about any kind of physical or mental stress which can come on them when we will be asking them or interviewing them some questions, right? Now, I cannot go ahead with my research without asking them some important questions, or some questions which actually are in the direction of my research objective. Now, what are the mitigation mechanism I can think of here? So we can just, as a researcher, we can just give an written assurance to the respondents. For example, we will not be asking you, the questions beyond a certain, area. Additionally, we will not be exposing your identities. So these are some mitigation mechanisms which we as a researcher need to think if we are touching on some sensitive topic or sensitive, information. Additionally, the signals and the danger of unethical code of conduct also we have to keep in mind. So we have to be very sure about what are the risks involved in this, and what is the momentum, the level of the risk involved, and what are the mitigation mechanism which we should include as a researcher. If the answer to above question is no, the research may be reasonably regarded as ethically sound. So if there is no potential harm, then, or harm to any person at structural or process level, then definitely we can say that the research is ethically sound. So this is the ethics part. Last comes the feasibility. The research on the topic should provide an answer that can be pursued and found. So many of the time we have seen as a researcher that we shortlist some topic and then we feel like, I'm going to cover this, and this. So there are so many things, so many objectives which are there in a research. Now, as a researcher, we have to also see how feasible it is. So very often as a researcher, what we do, either we will be doing too much in a research, like so many objectives are there, so many things are there to cover in, or sometimes it's too little, specifically to premier journals, right? So we have to create a balance. It should not be too much in a research paper, but it should not be also too little. So there are some expectations which we are discussing over here at the premier journalist level, and we have to keep this in mind. Now, premier journals tend to operate with strict page and word limit. So we have to understand this. Let's say, for example, specifically the journals who also comes in the print format. Okay, so let's say for Emerald. Emerald is also an online platform wherein your research paper will get published, but they also print the journals in hard copies. So they have a strict page count or a word limit starting from 7,000, 8,000. It may go up for a specific category of paper, but for Emerald, I have personally seen that the limit is around 8,000, right? So it'll be very difficult for us if we are planning too much. It'll be very difficult for us to meet the Emerald's, criteria. Let's say Springer. So even Springer and Taylor Francis gives a bit of more, like they are more liberal in terms of page limits. But let's note that they provide this flexibility only in terms of the specific category of paper, like literature review papers. So we have to note it, and since the starting, we have to keep in mind the structure of the paper, that usually the introduction we write in a specific number, then how much number of words we'll be taking in for the rest of the uh, uh, topics or the rest of the sections of the research paper. So we have to plan that in prior. So we have to ask a few questions in prior to us whether we have enough knowledge and skills for doing that research paper or not. Now you might be thinking, what kind of knowledge and skills? So sometimes it's like a specific methodology, let's say. Okay, so you might be seeing that, okay, one person is very good at writing introduction and review of literature because they have a prior record of writing in literature review, like systematic literature review or the things like that. So we can have that thing. Apart from this, are we having the command on the methodology? So let's say if it is a methodology, let's say panel data analysis, or let's say if it is a methodology on some Garch model that is a very prominent in finance, or let's say structural equation modeling. So we have to think about that do we have enough expertise? If we are not having, sometimes we can invite collaboration and co-creation with some other authors. We can invite them for collaboration so that we get that bulk bunch of knowledge and skills which is required to execute that particular research. Then comes the funding part. We have to check whether there is in grant authorities or we are whole sole responsible for the funding. We have to also be careful about the time part, how many days, weeks, and months we are planning to finish this. So usually we should have an, even we are, if we are an independent researcher or we are writing some dissertation or thesis, we have to plan this thing. Then comes the scope, the adequacy of effect and relevance. That so these are the checkpoints, right? Again and again we have to check it and plan in prior. Like let's say if we are planning some research design, so how will be the sampling, how we are going to collect the data, what are the places from where we are going to collect the data, right? What are the resources which we will require, how we are going to access to the population, right? What kind of technology we are needing. Okay, so all these things we have to plan in prior for checking on the feasibility. We cannot go to a certain point of the research and then plan, all right, we need some this skill for to finish this project, right? If I need someone to be expertise in structural equation modeling or a specific methodology, or I need specific technology, or I need to interview some population, I should plan that thing in prior. or check the feasibility in prior. So if the answer to the above question is yes, definitely the research topic is feasible. If the answer is no, the research topic is very likely to be perceived as lacking in feasibility. So I hope this final criteria helps you out in squeezing out or to filtering out your research topic uh, in the beginning of your research, and help you out in finding or choosing the right topic for your research. If you have any other methods, methodologies, ways of doing that, please do share in the comment box. And last but not the least, just to refer to the references, I have already mentioned on every slide the references of the content which we are covering in this video. So if you want to directly go and read the research paper, you can read the research papers which we have referred for making this content. So thank you so much once again.